Many of our mistakes are caused by the upper arm and shoulder. The force direction is wrong. Some players do this. Tucking the arm tucks to the side. The arc hasn't formed yet, but once they control the upper arm and shoulder, and use the wrist to drive the forearm, the stroke trajectory becomes correct. But when all movements are added together, the chance of errors increases. Many players give me feedback. My brushing is actually quite good. If you ask me to practice it alone, I can loop the ball. But when I do the full stroke, I can't loop it. As soon as I serve and step aside, I hit into the net. When I do the full stroke, it actually goes into the net. The issue is our upper arm and shoulder are moving in the wrong direction. If you just use the wrist to drive the forearm, you can't go further up. So it stops here, but once you lift the upper arm, the arc hasn't formed, and you're already swinging upward. See that? This way it's stable. At worst, it just lacks power, but it will land on the table. The stroke itself is good, but once you add the upper arm, it turns into this. It's worse than not using the upper arm. That's the cause of many errors. Our swing trajectory is wrong. If your brushing isn't solid enough, then your force and direction are off. That makes your brushing essentially ineffective. This way is the simplest. Once you add body rotation or involve other body parts, the contact point may be wrong, and the stroke breaks down. The brushing direction goes wrong. It shifts to the left. The arm tucks. Then all the problems come. So the idea is, when you practice this, if the opponent gives you backspin, use forearm and wrist. If you can loop it this way, but fail in matches, then the problem is on you. It must be swing direction. Arm movement. Backswing, lowering something. Some part must be wrong. Sometimes it's not about brushing itself. It's the direction of force at contact. That makes the ball trajectory wrong. Let me ask everyone. When looping, do you loop in the rising phase, peak, or early falling phase? Which stage? Falling, right? All early falling phase? Very good, very good. Wow, rising phase? That's impressive. Okay, let me loop one. First of all, let's be clear. You can loop at any stage. But I think depending on when you loop, the quality or effect will be different. Right now, I'll loop in the rising phase. Watch. For me, if it's a long ball, I definitely wouldn't choose this. To be honest. In real matches, it's hard to anticipate. I really can't handle this timing because I also need to rotate my waist, lower my stance. So when does this usually happen? Yeah, it happens here. On half-long balls. It pops up. This ball is a half-long, not a full-long. That's called a half-long, half-table ball. I'll usually try to take it early, attack it. When receiving serve, if the opponent serves this way and I'm ready to receive, I might take it on the ball's rising phase. In other situations, it's almost impossible. It's difficult. So what's the second option? The peak highest point phase. They push it over. Then I strike. Yes, that's the peak phase. I generally use this more often. In most cases, I play a forward loop drive. I use this action more frequently. For this ball I want to attack aggressively. And I've anticipated it. Now the question comes up. Can't you loop at a higher contact point here? You can. But it won't generate much spin. The lower the ball, the more brushing you can do and the more spin you get. Table tennis is about which method is more reasonable, which produces higher quality, and which lands more often. So which balls are suitable for the early falling phase? Balls like this. They have a large angle and strong spin. If you try to take the peak on these, you're especially likely to make errors, because your footwork can't keep up. Because you also need to judge it. So many players say, I can only loop at the early falling phase. That's actually correct. Looping in the early falling phase fits the reality for amateur players. When the opponent pushes, you make your judgment and plant your foot stably. It really ends up being the early falling phase. If you get a little nervous or react a little slower, you'll basically be contacting in the early falling phase. But can you still play a forward loop in the early falling phase? Do you think it's possible to drive forward then? Let's ask our fellow players. Everyone has different opinions on each question. Some say yes. Some say no. So let's run a little test. I'll loop one first. Everyone can recognize whether it's the early falling phase. Look, like this point. Is this the early falling phase? Yes. Yes, so first let's confirm that. Now, let's see if I can play a forward loop. Now you see whether it's possible or not. It's the same logic as looping high arc balls at the peak. It can be done. Some often tell me, I can only loop high arc on these balls. I ask why. They say, because I'm late to the contact point. But even if you're late, you can still loop forward. Is there an absolute forward loop or high arc? Here, I'll loop one now, you take a look. Is it high arc or forward? Hey, looks more like forward loop, right? Yes, good. Now I'll loop another, you look again. So what do we call this? If the first one was forward loop, then what about the second one? The second was even more forward. So we shouldn't get stuck in misconceptions. What I hope is, everyone can adjust. There's no absolute high arc, absolute forward, or absolute correctness. We need to adjust the ratio of hitting versus brushing. I see what you mean. For example, when this ball comes. Although I'm a bit late. Look, the ball is high. Or not very long. Even though I'm contacting low, I can use more hitting, less brushing, to increase forward force. But if the ball is very spinny, I can use more brushing and less hitting. There's no rigid rule saying peak must be forward and falling must be high arc. For example, if I anticipate well, at the peak I can drive forward, or I can brush more. For example, at the peak here, I can brush more and loop it. There's no absolute. You have to judge rationally, according to your situation. If the conditions are good, I'll hit more. If the conditions aren't good, I'll brush more. It depends on the opponent's shot and environment. Even though peak generally suits forward, and falling suits high arc, it's not absolute. Let me give an example. My position is poor. I can still, even at the peak, add more brushing action. Because my position is bad, you shouldn't force yourself to hit forward hard. And you force a hard forward loop, you'll definitely make a mistake. That's because of poor positioning. But if I want to add power, I can also increase hitting speed to generate power. If my position is good and my contact point is right, then I can improve shot quality. But if I'm in position and the ball changes, it curves, or floats a bit, then I can add safety by adding more brushing. If you feel the conditions are good and the incoming ball is ideal, you can increase hitting to add more speed and power to the shot. If not, then add more brushing and safety.